Hi, good morning, everyone. This is the EFS Modernization Release 3.0 transition call. And since we're about 2 minutes late getting started, we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. If we could have folks type into the questions box to let us know that you can both see our screen and hear us, then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, great. Thank you very much. All right, what we want to do here is we're going to give you another update on the data review exercises and migration that we've been talking about, and also talk to you about some of the priority items that we know are issues, and then we'll get into looking at some questions. Rob, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you first.
Good morning. Yes, so yesterday afternoon we sent an email out to our transition group that explained that the corrected migration reports have been placed out on SharePoint now. What that report is going to show you, it should show you the same amount of active enrollments from the previous report, probably more accurate because of the number of migrations that could have been placed in the wrong coalition. This report should be the accurate report. You will see the explanation in the email is there will be some null values. Those are the ones, the records, the enrollments that we have deleted, and I'm using air quotes. We deleted those records from the migration. Those records are available in the database. Basically, when we remove the migration, it won't show up on the EV process or in the search queues. So keep that in mind as you're working through this. So if you've already completed this report and you've identified all of the records that needed to be corrected and you submitted that to us already, you do not have to go back and redo any of that work. We are looking through those documents now, and we're going to be making data fixes based on that information. However, if you have the bandwidth to look at this corrected report and you still find some other things that weren't on the original report, you could also report that to us as well, and you're going to need these documents in order to use as references when we complete the entire migration, which we are working today, tomorrow, to make sure that we get all of those missing migrations into the system so you can complete redeterminations and validate the data as we move forward. So some of the questions that we received, that I've received since yesterday, were on some of these records that were not found in the system that you're going to find that are on this report as not being migrated. What do you do with those if that family comes in to complete a redetermination? You would send that to the service desk, and we've already received some of those requests that you would want. This is a migration error, it's a missing record, and what we'll do is we'll take either an SR application ID number or a household ID number in order to migrate that case. So submit that to the service desk. In the subject line, put migration error if you cannot find that child in the mod system. So that is how you report that to the service desk. In addition, in parallel with all of that information that we're giving you, we're also working on a feature to put into the coalition portal where coalitions can add these corrections through the system. So if it's supposed to be a migrated record and you can't find it, you can do a search on the CHIN field that is in that report, and then you'll find that child. You'll add that child to a particular household, and you find the households by the SR application ID, the household ID, or if they don't have a previous entry in the family portal, you could also create a new one. So that's how we'll work through these records that were deleted. There's about 20,000 throughout the state. We're going to be working through these either through the reports this new feature, which we're going to try to have put in a hot fix in the next few days. So you'll have access to that report, and that should identify all of these migration records and get them into the place where they are. So that's all I have on that. Do you want to have something to add to that?
Okay. No, thank you very much. So the next thing that we just want to address briefly here with you all is we know that there are obviously a number of issues that are outstanding, and just kind of want to talk about what our priorities are with you all. So again, as Rob just mentioned, the migration data fixes. So if you have mismatched persons and you're dealing with it right now before having to, before this feature is built, that go ahead and send them to us, to the service desk, and we'll have one of our staff get them into the system for you so that you can serve the family. The next piece is that we know, reimbursement is right around the corner, and so we are working on finishing that out as well. The next thing is we did get reports that the co-payment income piece was not working. We have confirmation this morning that that should be fixed. So I'm going to put a fixed here so you all can take a look at that in production. And please let us know immediately whether or not if you're seeing any issues. Go ahead, Jabbar.
Yeah, so when you do access the eligibility for a child, make sure you click on the recalculate button, and that copay should recalculate to match whatever the household income and household size is. So when you first load the screen, it won't appear. If you hit recalculate, it should recalculate and give you the right values.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, and then the next thing is funding notification issues.
Yeah, we identified reasons why the funding notifications weren't going out for all of or some of the children, and we're working on getting a data fix for all of those cases. It had to do with bad data from a child that's been waiting from a very long time ago. So we have identified that, and we're going to work on getting those fixed, and we'll let you know when that's done.
So if people have data, do people need to send those to the service desk, or do we have a way to identify those for collection?
I have a way of identifying all the ones that are affected with this particular scenario, and then if we need to, we can send the list out.
Okay, perfect. And then the last item on the list is provider transfer issues.
Yes, yesterday we worked on identifying the reasons why provider transfers weren't working, and it had to do with enrollments and eligibility assignments that were migrated. So during this process, we migrated the enrollments, and then we created the eligibility assignments based off of that. There were some fields in there that were missing. It had a null value where it was expecting a 0. So there are a bunch of fields we updated in production. So now if you're having any issues with, you shouldn't have any more issues with ending enrollments and then creating another enrollment on top of it, because we fixed the eligibility assignment associated to it. This shouldn't happen going forward. Once you create the eligibility assignment, it will have the correct data in there, but you're building an enrollment on top of a migrated eligibility assignment with bad data into it. So we fixed that, and that shouldn't be a problem anymore.
Okay. All right, thank you very much, Nilesh. So a couple questions about the sliding fee scales and copays. I think that the issue was corrected within the past 30 minutes. So go ahead and check that again this morning and let us know if you're not seeing issues. So question is, how do we verify that we have the correct sliding fee scale in MOD? Well,
we used the approved sliding fee scales that you all submitted to OEL. So if you when you're doing your testing, look at the sliding fee scale that you all provided us and verify that the household size and the household income and the co-pays all are in line together.
Yeah, the issue wasn't with the coalition rates, it was with the base table that is shared across all the coalitions. So there was a mismatch with the values in there, and we were able to identify that and fix that. And then that should fix it across the board.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so you need to check the enrollment status. If the status still states pending family acceptance.
Let me read the question real quick, sorry,
Sure.
before we jump in. We can confirm, so there are a couple of questions related to payment certificates. So we can confirm that the provider transfer is working. However, we are unable to open the certificate. Does the parent still need to sign first?
Yes. So if you check the enrollment status and the enrollment says pending family acceptance or parent acceptance, I can't remember the terminology, but that means that the family would need to log into their account and sign and certify both or the terms and conditions and the payment certificate. Once that is done, then the enrollment should be finalized. And then once that is done, you should have access to that payment certificate button. There is some logic we added in for CCAA and for not linked accounts. So any accounts that haven't been linked to a family portal account, you will be able to get that payment certificate without the signature. But if we're expecting the family to sign it, then you won't have access to it until that signature is done. And maybe we can look into seeing if we can fix that so that you could just have access to that payment certificate regardless if there's a signature from the parent or not. So we'll look into that.
Okay, thank you, Noash.
So there were some questions about some of the dates or data elements from EFS Legacy that we did not migrate over. I know that we can go back and grab some of those data elements and migrate those as well if they're needed in the mod system. But I think the critical thing for us to do is to get the one-to-one match. So that is our step one, and then we will go back and look at anything that we might need to migrate in addition to what we've migrated. So the things that we did identify for migration were the items that will allow those enrollments to continue through the reimbursement process. So that was that was the main thing that we concentrated on when migrating the data elements out of the legacy system. But there are some other things that we see that could be valuable, such as review dates or things like that. So we'll go back and take a second look, but I think we need to complete the migration, get all the records associated, identified and for a one-to-one match, and then we can go back and see what additional items we can bring over once we have them matched. So we'll keep that in our queue.
Thank you, Rob. Okay, so the question is, when completing a funding transfer, do we need to terminate the enrollment under the old eligibility category also, or do we terminate that old eligibility? Establish the new eligibility under the new funding category and leave the enrollment as it is.
Okay, so if there's an active enrollment and it's reflecting the old information like the copayment and or the old eligibility codes, then you would need to end that enrollment. Eligibility assignments, if you look at that eligibility map that we placed in the eligibility assignment page, where it shows you the authorization period and all the eligibility assignments that live under that and all the enrollments that live under that, that should show you that enrollment that belongs to that eligibility assignment. So when you created that eligibility assignment, the data from there was fed into that enrollment. So if you're going to change the data from that eligibility assignment, for example, you're switching from BG8 to BG1, then you need to end that enrollment and create a new enrollment. So it's kind of like a tier system. You got the authorization period, you got the eligibility assignment, and then you got the enrollment. So you need to end the enrollment to the day where that enrollment value is going to be finished. So let's say this is going to be in effect tomorrow. So I would end it tomorrow on 7/11/2018. And then I would go in, after I put that termination date for that enrollment, I would go into the eligibility assignment. And then I would say, okay, let me update this eligibility assignment to end at 7/11/2018, because that's the last day this eligibility assignment would be in effect. And then that'll give you the opportunity to create a new eligibility assignment on the next day. So once you do that, you'll create a new eligibility assignment, you'll set up all the new values that have changed, and then you'll save that. And then it needs to be within the remainder of that current authorization period. So once you do that, take a look at the map. You'll see that you now have an eligibility assignment for the changes for the remainder of the authorization period. And then you can go create the new enrollment with the new provider, with the new changes, and that's going to create a new payment certificate that the parent would need to acknowledge, and the provider would need to acknowledge that the information on that payment certificate has changed. And then once that is done, now you have the new enrollment with the changes, you have the new eligibility assignment that it got the data from, and then that will live within the current authorization period for that child.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have a request to please show a demo about how to adjust parent fees during an eligibility period. So we're trying to get that set up, and we're going to continue going through questions here. Right, we have a question, or we have a comment that we're unable to save updates for schedules and calendars. The system will not allow us to save. So we're going to take a look at that to see if that's we need training guidance for you or if there is an issue. We apologize for the dead air. We're just trying to get to our last question. And again, Nilesh is trying to pull up his demo. Okay, we have a question about regarding reimbursement. What areas are we working on?
So for the reimbursement process, we're just kind of going back and integrating a few newer pieces that came in towards the end, like the unit of care changes and non-reimbursable days and the contracted slot payments. So the reimbursement model was done. We were just kind of integrating a few pieces that came in late.
Thank you, Andrea. All right, we're going to go ahead and pass it over to Nilesh so he can demonstrate some of this stuff again with the eligibility and authorization period. Okay.
All right. So we did have a bunch of questions. I'm going to try to get a couple of them answered with this pass. All right. So let's take a look at this record. All right. I'm looking at this kid. Nope. All right. So I'm just praying I'm not working on a bad test record. So this one looks like I can work with this. Let me go ahead and remove this authorization period. So I was playing with this last month. I went ahead and create their authorization period for a year. I created their eligibility assignment that was good for roughly a year. And then I also set up their enrollment. So now we want to say that something has changed. So I did this back at 6/5/2018, and something has changed. So at this point, I talked about earlier about the tier system. You got your authorization period, and then the next tier would be the eligibility assignment, and then the next tier is enrollment. So we kind of built it in that order, so we need to unbuild it in that order as well. So we need to start with the enrollment. So the first thing I want to do is end this enrollment because I know I need to change some things. And I'm going to try to change the billing group, and I'm going to be changing the co-payment and all that information. So I'm going to go ahead and hit cancel here, and then, yep. All right, let's go ahead and remove. I want to remove this. I want to hit save. I didn't save it last time. Okay, so that's there. All right, now the first thing we need to do is end that enrollment. So this is the active enrollment. It's currently pending parents' acceptance. I need to go handle that. But before I do that, I want to see if there's another record I could play with, so I don't have to do that. Those dates aren't as good. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that real quick. I apologize for this.
Will EFS Mod send out notifications for the 90-day review period at 45 days, 30 days, and 15 days, as it does with redetermination?
So the way review period is going to work, it's supposed to send out that email upon creation. So when you create that review period, it should kick off an email and send it to that family. And then after that, it's going to be every 15 days, it'll just kick it off. So every 15 days, it'll send a reminder that they have not submitted their up-to-date information and that they need to do so. So that's the way that works. And then redetermination is just, it's specified, but it is also on a 15-day increment.
Thank you, Noah. Okay, the question is, do coalitions need to correct missing enrollments, or will that populate as part of the data match?
That will populate as part of the data match. So that is the corrected migrations report that we put out there. You will have some items that have not been matched to an EFS record, and those will show up as blanks in any of the mod columns. So those are items that we are still going to migrate. So you wouldn't want to add something that is one of those items.
Okay. Thank you, Rob. So the question is, when a case is not in redetermination status, can we trigger the process? For example, when we complete a manual process currently and then have to key it into EFS Mod, but the case is not in redetermination status, how do we bypass that?
If it's not a RED, then it's you can just change the household status to pending update. Here, let me show you real quick. So this is currently active. It's not undergoing a redetermination, but we want the family called in and they want to make an update, then they would simply say, you know, set it to pending update. I'm not going to actually do it, but that's essentially what you do. If you hit save, it should kick off an email to the family saying you now have access to the family portal to update your information, and then they have 15 days to do that, and if they don't do it within 15 days, then we're going to be pulling it back into a coalition reviewing state, and then you can decide what to do at that point. And at that point, you can either put it to active or contact the family. So if they want to make an update, you just put it in pending update.
Okay.
And I am ready to go.
Okay.
Okay, so to work these other enrollments, but this is the last record I was demonstrating on yesterday, so I'm going to do my very best with this one right here. So I know that this enrollment was, it started on 7/10. There is no end date on this enrollment. So I'm going to go ahead and put in a future end date for this. So let's see here. Let's go ahead and do 08/10/2018. And then that's going to be the same. All right. Okay, so now we have an end date, and it's good for a month. All right. So you could see that the enrollment was updated here. Now that gives us the opportunity to go ahead and end this eligibility assignment earlier as well. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. All right, I was just double checking the dates. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save this and then go back in there. So now that I see that the eligibility assignment has been updated, the enrollment has been updated, now I can create a new eligibility assignment. So it was a BGA decon. I can go ahead and create another one or switch it to something else, but I'm going to keep it, well, let's say that they switch to a referral. All right, so it's going to start on 8/10/2018, and then I know it's good for 3 months. So I'm going to go ahead and say 11/10/2018. Filling out all the required information. All right. So this is the copayment, and since we're just going to zero out their copayment. So I'm just putting in the amount we want to subtract. So as you can see, it's going to be this value, subtracting this value will get you the resulting full-time copayment. So I did the exact same thing for part-time. All right, so that was updated. I created the eligibility assignment, and this has the new copayments, the new values, and all that information saved into this eligibility assignment. So if I create an enrollment, it's going to have these values. So I just need to make sure that the enrollment start date is going to be here. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead and add an enrollment. I'm going to pick a provider. I'm just going to verify something real quick. So I know that they're already enrolled in here. So I'm going to continue the enrollment here. All right. And I know it's going to be starting on this day. And then this is the eligibility assignment that we defined, and it's the BG1. The co-payments have been zeroed out. All right. Going to go ahead and set their schedule. And then I'm going to do it on behalf of the provider and then save it. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So all right, I did the same provider. I think that's a bug that we just ran into, and I need to look into this to get this fixed. Let's see what happens if we pick a different one. All right, all right, we need to take a look at that. We need to be able to make sure that we can do an enrollment with the same provider where the dates do not overlap. So I'll take a look at that and get with the developer on that. All right, so we were able to make another enrollment, but we found the bug that we need to look into. So that's essentially how that would work. If we take a look at the eligibility assignment, we can now see that the enrollment that we've transferred, we couldn't do an enrollment with the same provider because of the bug we've introduced, but this enrollment has the values from this eligibility assignment.
All right, thank you very much, Kailash. All right, good question. When will the user guides be available? We are wrapping those up and hope to have them ready, I would say at the latest by the early next week, but at the earliest would be at the end of this week. All right, the comment is that the parent fee works now, but the parent was in the office yesterday. Today, now that it is fixed, we are unable to backdate the enrollment, which means the provider will not be able to select an attendance day for yesterday.
So if you all completed the eligibility assignment yesterday and you started the enrollment yesterday, then that means hopefully you have put an anticipated start date of the same day that you did the eligibility on. So basically, if your anticipated start date is the same day as your eligibility start date and that was yesterday, then that provider should be able to mark attendance for yesterday. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, we have a question about being able to change the family size in mod, so needing to be able to change that.
Yeah. So I think what they're asking is, can they remove a child from the household size? And right now, we're not able to remove a child that has had eligibility assigned to them. So if it was a new child
From the household.
if it was a new child that had never had eligibility assigned, we could remove it. But if the child has ever been enrolled or had eligibility, the ability to remove that child is not there. So we're going to have to work on that. But a child can be added to the household. So if the household size needs to be increased, you can add a second parent or add more children. But the ability to reduce the household size, that is not something we have yet.
Okay, Nilesh has an update. We're going to go ahead and pass it back over to him so that he can show you. He figured out what the issue was.
Thank you, Amy. Okay, let me see if I can make this a little bigger. All right, so what we're seeing here, this was my enrollment that I had here, and then I went ahead and future ended the enrollment. Put a future date for the termination date for the enrollment. So I set them up to be terminated on 8/10/2018. They're still enrolled until this day is going to come. And what I did wrong was I set up the next enrollment on the same day. It needs to be the day after. So that's why I wasn't able to do it with the same provider. So you should be able to do it. If you're going to end it on 10/18 or 8/10/2018, and that's the last day that they're going to attend, then obviously they need to set their enrollment date to the next day, and that's why it wasn't allowing me to save it. So that wasn't a bug. It's working as designed, and I just wanted to share that with you guys.
Thank you, Nilesh, for the clarification. I have a question about where the Ryla Wilson flag is. And
Okay, yeah, I think the question is asking, will the providers know when a child is flagged with the Ryla Wilson indicator? So in the eligibility screen, when you're assigning that child's eligibility, there's a checkbox for the Ryla Wilson. If you check that box, when you complete the enrollment with that provider, that flag is going to show up on their provider enrollment screen for that child. So that's going to be there. We have more enhancements coming that will also populate the attendance record with that. But in the meantime, if you want to provide that provider with additional information or guidance on that child, you can also do things outside the system as well for that provider.
All right, we have a question about what does the acknowledge button on the admin side do when ending an enrollment?
So the acknowledge button that's on the enrollment screen. So if there's an enrollment rejection by the provider, if the parent rejects the enrollment, or if their enrollment is terminated by the provider, there's an SR action required queue. When you click the acknowledge button on this screen, what it does is it clears that record from the SR enrollment and SR action required queue. So yeah, that's what that button does. That's all that it does. It doesn't free up the system to do a second enrollment. It just clears that queue.
Okay, thank you, Shavar. All right, so the question is referring to funding transfer from a BGA to a CCPP that doesn't have to have a parent signature on payment and terms. So right now, yes, the system is requiring you to do it for all. So we were just kind of talking to SR policy about that. So it sounds like that if the copay amount doesn't change, that we may have some room to be able to tweak that in the system. So if there's no money changes, that, you know, we would be able to exclude that from making them have to re-sign. So we can look at doing that. All right, so the question is for redetermination. When doing a redetermination, when staff enter the new authorization period, they're getting error messages. Is there something we need to look at specifically to resolve it?
I thought we went ahead and create the next authorization periods for all redeterminations up to 8/15. So you shouldn't have to be doing that. So if you want me to take a look at a case for you, go ahead and send it to the service desk and go ahead and CC Nilesh, and I'll take a look at that for you.
And an easy way to tell that is if you open the eligibility for that child, you'll see the map.
Yeah.
You'll see if there are 2 authorization periods and one of them says next authorization period and the dates are already set.
Yep.
You don't have to create a new one. It's already there for you.
It should be there for you. And we should not be doing redeterminations earlier than what we've already set so far. So you shouldn't be in a place where you're doing redeterminations.
The question is, for a CCAA referral, we are able to bypass the need for the parent to acknowledge the terms and conditions and print the payment certificate for the parent to sign. If using this method, how is the parent acknowledging the terms and conditions?
You would need to contact that family and have them physically sign the documentation, and then you can attach that to their household record in the additional documentation section until we can get a better solution for you.
Okay. Question is, will there be an internal process for fiscal funding transfers, such as a BG8 to CCEP, that will not result in a new enrollment and notifying the parent?
So I think this was those other questions that were asked about, not wanting to have the parent get involved and having to sign for those things. And that happens, that certificate and everything happens when you change that enrollment and the eligibility and so forth. I do want to mention that during the reimbursement process, you can change the child's billing group. Like you can go from CCEP to BG8. It's an adjustment. It's a current period adjustment. And that does not affect the enrollment record at all. So the enrollment record will stay whatever it was. But for this month or the service period processing, you can change the funding type if that's what you guys are getting at without having to change the base enrollment. You can do that as a current period adjustment. When you're going to verify the payment, you'll see how we calculate it, and you'll see it, for this billing group. And then if you want to adjust it, you hit adjust, and then you can change basically anything you want to change for this payment for this service period, including the billing group. Okay.
Now we only have a few more minutes. We're just looking through these questions to see if there's any really critical ones, and then the rest of them we'll try to address individually. We have a question about permissions, and we are still continuing to work on permissions for reimbursement specifically. We know that we have some of the permissions laid out, but we're still testing that fully.
Yeah, because those features are not in complete development yet. So once we get that rolled out, those permissions will apply then.
Mm-hmm. All right, we're going to end on this note. So we know we have a question here about SR contracts and the SR reimbursement rates table, how that works when reimbursement gets plugged in and gets going. So we are going to talk about that a little bit tomorrow on our call. We may do a demonstration to show you what to do there. So again, we're going to go ahead and stop here. We've recorded this webinar, and we'll place it out on the SharePoint site. And those of you who we didn't get to your questions, we will take a look and try to reply individually. Thank you, everyone, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.